Hello there. Today I'm making sourdough bread, and I've been doing this for a while. It's made with whole wheat flour that we mill ourselves, and my sourdough starter, which I started from fresh milled flour, so that's all it's known. So I'm pretty sure all the lactobacillus and yeast that it uses came from the flour itself. It's not a difficult recipe, but unlike most of the fresh milled or the commercially available flour that's used, the fresh milled flour requires more water. So my sourdough recipe is basically 550 grams of flour, 450 grams of water, and then 115 grams of yeast, and then a couple teaspoons of salt. And it goes together like everything else. Today I'm making a double batch because I am giving a couple of loaves away to somebody, to one of my neighbors, for watching my cat while we're camping as a partial payment. And then just to say thank you for being good neighbors throughout the year. And so I've got it all done, it's already milled, and now I'm just gonna weigh out my yeast. And I started these last night, so they've probably been in here, I don't know, 12, 13 hours, it doesn't matter. Usually, a lot of people say start early, but a lot of people have good luck with doing it. And I find this yeast in here is pretty resilient, and it will work a long time. I haven't really tried just doing it after a 24-hour feeding. And I've stuck to feeding it daily and not putting it in the fridge. I'm just letting it develop. It's probably about a month old, and I've made quite a few loaves of yeast out of it. And that looks pretty good. It's 233 grams. It's close enough for government work. And then just mix it up a little bit. Stir it in the water. As you can see, it's just trying to get a little mixed in before I dump this all in, because it doesn't take much to mix all this up. That's good enough. I don't need to totally incorporate it, but I just want it in. And so we'll add that. And I've seen where some people will do this part and mix it up and let it sit for an hour, and then they'll come back and add their salt later. But I found it doesn't really matter. It works the same either way, because I've done this with regular bread recipes with regular yeast. Just throw the salt in. It's better to have it than to forget it and not have it later. And I am by no means a professional baker. As you can see, I've even forgotten to get out all my implements and try to make this look like I know what I'm doing. So I'm just going to mix it all up until there's no dry flour. And there's a lot of people that will say to mix it and then knead it for a little while. Some people will just leave it alone and then come back after a half hour or an hour and start doing the pulls or what have you. But I have found that this works good just to get everything to come together. Now I'm just going to wet my hands a little bit, because it's a lot going on, but it'll all come together and look like a nice thing. But with fresh milled flour, for me, I found it works well to let it sit for an hour. That lets all the grain absorb the water fully, and then I will start the stretch and folds. And I'll probably, for the first time, knead it for a little bit. and then get it all to come together. But I'll probably need it a few more than just a regular, 4 or 5 stretch and folds, and then cover it back up. And I started this with pretty warm water, a little warmer than room temperature, but not hot, because you don't want it. Because that gives it a little kickstart for the yeast to keep working. Because if it's too cold, the yeast are going to shock and take a while to get going. And so we'll get all this back in there. And there we go. Got it all put together. It's a nice, what I like to call a shaggy loaf. We'll let her shag away. And we'll just cover it, and then I like to keep it in the oven when it's cooler, just to help insulate it and keep that heat. And my oven is equipped with a bread cycle, with a bread proofing cycle, but I don't like to use it too often or leave it on completely, because the temperature is at 95 degrees and you can't change it. And a lot of people like to do 80 degrees, which I think makes sense, a good warm room temperature. So I'll turn it on and leave it on for a little bit, and then I'll shut it off and let it go. And if the oven feels a little cool, I'll turn it back on, let it run for a while again later. And that seems to work pretty well. Well, we're gonna let that sit for an hour, and then we'll come back. All right, here we are back. It's been roughly an hour. I'm gonna take the cover off. Now these covers, simple Amazon buy, they're great for the bowls, because it really makes it better than, I like doing that because it keeps the moisture in, instead of just putting a dish towel over the top. And then I like it, they're just so easy to deal with. But make sure you get multiple sizes, because I got one size and I kept breaking them on the bowls and I figured it out. But anyway, so we've got the dough. It's mostly hydrated. It's been sitting, and it's already started, its process. And all I do is pull it up and stretch it out. And at this point, this doesn't have any gluten in it. So it hasn't developed any gluten. So it's gonna break and tear and do things. But then I like to get it, after that pulls together a little bit, and get it out of the bowl and lift it up and do some of the slap and folds I've seen so many people talk about loving. But it's already starting to come together. I'm making a nice dough, and it's not horribly wet. But yeah, we'll do this for a few minutes. That's probably enough. I don't like to spend a lot of time on it, because I don't think it needs a ton. But I'll end up doing these, and then, people get caught up into doing all the manipulations and rolling it around and folding and doing all that stuff, trying to make tension, but it's all gonna break down and do the weird things. The gluten's created inside, that's where you want it, and the other stuff comes in later. I always like to keep everything on the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. And usually everything will turn out, and all those little bitty things are more for you than they are for the bread. So it just seems unnecessary to me to get it doing all that. And then I slip it back in the fridge, and I'll let it sit for a half hour. Now, the timing isn't that necessary. It's gonna take a lot of time for the yeast to do its bulk proof. And now it starts to bulk proof the moment you put it together, and it will continue to do that. And they say, a lot of people recommend 4 to 6 hours. Or 8 hours even. I've had pretty good luck with it between roughly about 5 hours, 4 to 5 hours. And then I'll put it in the fridge and let it proof overnight. I have to shape it and put it in the bannetons, and I'll show you that later. But just do it every so often, because I'm stopping today and I'm up painting one of my bedrooms upstairs, and I'll go paint a little more and I'll come back in half an hour. All right, there we have it. That's that's the half hour for the second stretch and fold. And you can see we're fairly smooth. Things are looking pretty good. So already just give it, I always end up doing probably 5, sometimes 6, especially with it. I always try to lift up every section of the dough. Actually, that's like 8 of them there, but I'm trying to get around it. And this is a pretty big roll of dough because it's a double batch, which for my recipe, once again, is 1,100 grams of flour, 900 grams of water, 230 grams of the yeast starter, and then it is 4 teaspoons of salt. So once again, we're looking pretty smooth after that. It always tightens up by the time you get to the coils, and then I flip it over so that the smoother side is up. Just create something, and then we slip the cover back on. And we're back in the oven again. All right, here we are now, back again for our third fold. And I've been stretching these out. They've probably been closer to 40 minutes. And we're getting everything set. I just need to get a little water on the hands. It makes it a little easier for this not to stick, but I find it still does anyway. And you can see it's, once again, pretty smooth. So we'll do it until I've folded every edge of the bread here. And it is starting to get a little more gluten development going on. It's not tearing as easy as it was early on. So we're looking pretty darn good. So, and you can feel a little bit of the yeast growing, but it's got to work its way through the dough. So you can see we're looking good, but we're pushing on it and it's staying sunk in. So it's still got quite a bit of time. And I don't pay too close attention to the time. I'll let it sit around and do its thing. And I'll show you later how I kind of judge whether or not we're done or ready or close enough when we form it later. All right, we'll continue on. Back to more painting. All right, we're back again for the fourth and final fold. Yeah, look at that. That's really strengthening up. Oh yeah, I see some air bubbles forming too. Yep, that looks good. You can see how nice and smooth that is getting. So, oh yeah, and you can definitely see some major air bubbles going. I don't mind popping them out. They're gonna form more. So we'll press that down, smooth side up, and I'm going to put it back in the oven again. And we'll leave that for a few hours. I will come back and show you when I think it's proofed, and then we'll get into some folding and prepping it and putting it in the Banneton. All right, it's been probably 4 hours since I did my last fold, stretch and fold, and you can see it looks pretty good. It has risen quite a bit, so we're looking pretty good, and it pulls away pretty good. I think I've probably been a little busy and I left it a little long, but it's fine. Yeah, it's pulling away a little hard. I should have probably done this an hour ago. Then I think I added didn't seem to be doing as well, so I took it out and put it in a little heat in the oven. But now we're ready to divide this in two. And we're
going to treat each one of these a little different. Like I said before at the start, this is a gift for a neighbor. So I won't be cutting into these. I'm just relying on that I've done it right and that it'll come out. We're going to stretch it out. And so my two methods, I'm doing one of these as a cinnamon raisin loaf. My wife has a real good liking for that one. So I've made it quite a bit since I started doing this. And that one always seems to turn out good. But this one we're trying something new, which I'm kind of sad that I won't be eating it, so I'll have to make another one in the near future. Because what we're doing is this is about 1.5 sticks of butter. I use salted butter for this because I kind of like that little extra salt in there, but it's really not enough to notice. So, but what we're going to do is we're going to put this butter as we fold this and reshape it. And some terms for this has been called a croissant sourdough bread. And I mean, what it does is the butter makes the crust and the interior puff a little bit more when it loses the as it bakes, the butter tends to melt and evaporate a bit and creates steam pockets and melts into the bread. And so it kind of gives it a little bit of a different texture, at least that's what I've heard. Helps if I close the freezer after I take the butter out, because after I shredded it cold, but then after I shredded it, I put it in the freezer for a few minutes while I was getting everything else ready so that it would stay, because you want this as cold as possible because you don't want it to thaw, which is why I thought the best way to do it. I've seen people do it, add this during stretch and folds and things like that, but I don't want it to melt or thaw too much or get too warm. It's not like you need to do it like, I don't know if you've ever watched any of the baking shows, like the British thing where you gotta hurry up and get it back in the freezer. So you see, I'm just rolling it up and I'm gonna stretch it out again. And then I'm gonna flip it, get it a little bit stretched. The gluten is really shaped up nicely. While I was rolling it, I could actually see a couple of window panes while I was stretching it out. I think I'm just gonna do this one more time. And then I'm gonna cook this one. I have two batards here. I have one that is the oval, or kind of a semi-rectangle. There, you can actually see some of this butter is now worked its way out to the edge, which is what you want because it's gonna puff that crust out really nice. So I don't get too carried away. I mean, I've seen some people shape these things like they're doing origami. And like I said, I think I said it before, it's just a personal preference. Some people just like to do things more difficult because they want to show that they got skills. It really doesn't matter. It's still going to make a beautiful loaf. And this is going to sit in a Benetton all night in the fridge for 12 hours. That's going to get all smooth, make a nice crust, and look great in the morning. So even though this is far from perfect right now, I don't want to stretch it anymore because I don't want that butter poking through. I want it to stay in the dough. So what we do with the Benetton, now these are just a kit I had bought on Amazon. I'm not going to make a link. I'm not going to do anything like that because I'm not making diddly squat on this. I don't plan on it. And I'm just not sponsored by anybody. I'm not doing anything like that. I just do this because I like it. I think it's fun. And quite honestly, sourdough bread is the easiest recipe for bread I've ever found. It's more time, but it's easier to get consistent results. It's easier to make it work. Now this is some flour I pre-milled. Once again, this is flour I milled myself from wheat berries. So I just sprayed some water in there and I'm just shaking this around and this will adhere to it. But chances are when you shape it in to bake it, when you get it out of here, you're gonna wanna put it in. Now for the putting this in the fridge, because this is not a sealed container at all, this is just bamboo, and it's got gaps, the air comes through. This is a cloth basket. All I do is cover this with a tea towel and put it in the fridge, because that way it's gonna help with crust creation. Now we get the second one out. And this is my oval. I'm just gonna, while I'm doing it, I'm gonna get this one ready, and then we'll shape it. But yeah, these are easy to find on Amazon, because I found tons of, I'd seen somebody else do these bannetons. I never knew what they were until I started looking into it. And I just found a kit that had a lot of the stuff in it. Had the knife and everything else, 2 of these. It had an oval and the loaf. I actually kind of like the oval more than the round. I mean, they're both nice shapes, but this one can actually, you can use to make sandwich slices if you wanted. It just seems, for me, I kind of like the shape more. Just plain and simple. So we're gonna take this and stretch it out. And we're just making a nice little rectangle here. Not a square for you geometry geeks out there. All right. And I've already mixed up. This is a cinnamon nutmeg. So it's a crystallized honey that's ground into a powder. It's a product my wife had, and we get it from a local supplier that we get all of our wheat from, and they make it. It's just called honey granules, and it says it's kosher, but we get it at a place called Breadbecker's. This is their own label if you wanted to look at that. But the honey granules are nice because you don't have to deal with the moisture that honey sometimes robs from the things. And I like to put this in at the end. I don't like to swirl it in too early. But it's 2 tablespoons of the honey granules. You could substitute sugar. You'll probably get very consistent results. I find the honey is actually a little sweeter. But you get 2 tablespoons of the honey, and then 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, and then I throw in a half a teaspoon of nutmeg. Why do you say? Because I like it. And it comes out nice. It adds a good flavor. And then we just sprinkle it in the dough. And I'm not going to use all of it here, because I'm going to, after I fold it over, I'm going to add more. Why? Because more is better. And then we have our last ingredient, which is just plain old raisins. And we do raisins because if I do something cinnamon sugarish and I don't add raisins, I run the risk of disappointing my wife in a manner that I don't want to be responsible for. Because if you do if I do cinnamon rolls, and this bread is basically just an extension of cinnamon rolls, and I don't add raisins, it's just a sacrilege. So we'll fold that over, then we'll fold it over the other way, bring them together, and then I'll sprinkle the rest of it up. And you know, if you don't overwork it, this will swirl, make a nice pattern inside. But either way, as long as you get that flavor in there, it's really going to work well. But then if I add the cinnamon won't affect your yeast and your rise, but the sugar can. But yet in this late, you've already done all the proofing, and you're going to put it in the fridge. I like to do it overnight. I've heard some people say with this particular recipe that they didn't want to leave it in too long because it will over sour. But I've done it both ways where I've left it like, because the recipe called for leaving it for 3 hours in the fridge. And I've done that and left it, and it came out fine. And I did it later, and it came out even better when I left it overnight, because the yeast I have, which I propagated myself, which I think I said before, but it just seems to work well. So mine doesn't seem to over sour, but it makes a nice flavor. And it works well. It works well with this thing. Now that's all I'm gonna do. I've got the edges kind of folded under, and I don't want to do any more. I can already see the raisins trying to poke through. And we're gonna plop that in there. Once again, I'm just gonna cover this with a tea towel and stick it in the fridge overnight. And then in the morning, we'll bake it. All right, well, we'll see how this turns out. Good morning, we're back. I've got the bread out of the oven. out of the fridge. I've had the oven proofing for probably a little over an hour. I've got my Dutch ovens in the oven so that they're nice and hot. So we're gonna get these things scored and in the oven. So I'm gonna roll them out. I have these silicone mats. They were all part of the kit I got. So they actually match the size. And these are really worth the investment, whichever ones you can find, because they do make it ever so easier getting it out. And these kind of have a nice crust on the bottom and everything's set up. So I guess if I were going to leave them in the fridge longer, because I've seen where people will leave them for days, I would probably actually want to cover these with maybe a little plastic or a topper, but I don't really see myself leaving things that long. And I like to do a simple score. Get pretty deep. I just like to give it a curve. And then, and I'll go through it a couple times just to get it nice and fairly deep. But the only design I really care to do, I've tried the little floral things or whatever, but bread makes me happy. So I like to do a little smiley face. Now, and this is where this comes in very handy. Although they do like to stick to the counter with these gloves, makes it a challenge. Stick them in. And then a couple of ice cubes helps create some steam. That will help with crust development. So now we'll let those bake for 30 minutes with the lids on. And I have the oven at 450 degrees. And then I will take the lids off and leave them in there. And I'll probably leave them in there 10 minutes. I'm trying something different today because I find that if I leave them in there the whole time until they're done, until they reach about 205, 210 degrees inside, that if I leave them in there that whole time, the bottom tends to brown a little more. So I'm gonna try taking them out and sticking them back in just on the rack
and see how that finishes them. So after 10 minutes in there, so, and that's where once again the sling will come in handy because I can lift those out easier. All right, so we'll see how things go. You can really smell the cinnamon kicking in. And then you can see we're shaping up pretty good. That cinnamon roll split quite a bit. All right. Now I'm gonna let that go 10 more minutes, and then I'm gonna take them out of the Dutch oven to finish without it. See how that does on the bottoms. 10 minutes. You know what? That one I'm going to put in, but this one, the croissant loaf with all that butter in it, the butter is coming out and making things, it looks great, but it will make a huge mess in my oven if I don't leave it in the pan, so we're just going to leave it and hope that that comes out all right. It's been 10 more minutes. Now, I'm going to take both of these out. And I want to see, I've got a simple thermometer, and I'm just going to poke it in. And we're going to make sure the temperature is right, because I like to get these right because I don't want to underbake them, but I don't want them to be over either. I don't trust the tap because these are so thick, they can sound right and not be right. It takes a little bit of time here. This thing doesn't want to come up quickly. That one's reading 175, so we got a ways to go yet. And that one's at 205. So we're gonna that one's dropping. So I'm going to put this one back in the oven. And it's probably because I took it out of the pan. But, you know, we're already pretty dark underneath. All right. Didn't expect it to be done. Got some butter in the pan. You can see he looks pretty happy. So we'll call that doesn't suck. And that loaf looks very buttery. So we're gonna leave that. And we'll give it another, that was 175 degrees, so it's gonna take at least another 10-15 minutes to get that one right. So I'm gonna set it for 10 and check it again. All right, we're back. We're finished. This one came out. It took another 10 minutes. So life is good. And you can see it looks pretty good. So we had a nice split on it. And this one came out, they both look great. So we're gonna let them cool. One thing to always do, anytime you cook bread, let it cool completely before you cut into it. Because otherwise, that first slice, yeah, it'll look good, it'll be amazing, you'll love it, it's soft, it's nice, but the rest of the bread's gonna suck after that because all the moisture is gonna come out. The crust keeps the moisture in and makes it look good. So just have patience. And well, once again, that doesn't suck. So we'll go with it. Remember to try happy baking.